have wanted to be Elizabeth Swann wearing this specific dress from the first Pirates movie for 21 years and have already cosplayed Jack Sparrow, so let's take it up a notch and make the most beautiful dress on the seven seas. What's up guys, I'm Mackenzie and welcome back to my YouTube channel where I take you on the behind the scenes of my latest cosplay project. And today's video is none other than Elizabeth Swann's most iconic look, the dress from the first Pirates movie that Barbossa gives her aboard the Black Pearl. With all of that said, let's get into the supplies because we're gonna need a lot of them. Let's discuss. After staring at the dress and reference pictures for so long, I just knew that I wasn't going to be satisfied with ordering a bunch of swatches online and picking a fabric that way. It almost was easier for me to go into New York City and go to Mood and like touch the fabrics with my own hands and see them with my own eyes, so that's what I decided to do. I think I spent 3 hours running around Mood and absolutely sweating because I was wearing a wool coat and looking at every single purple shiny-ish fabric there was until I found the holy grail of all fabrics. It is so perfect! I mean, look at how it looks on camera. It's like a chameleon. Some information about her. She was unfortunately $25 a yard. So she was $250. But as soon as I laid my eyes upon her, she was not staying. There's no way I could leave her behind. I got this fabric while I was there too, just in case I wanted to use it for the interior pieces here and for like when the dress bustles up, you can kind of see that it has this type of fabric showing. It's more black on this side. This is my black fabric, which originally was white. Dyeing this fabric black almost caused me to explode my entire apartment. All right, let's go back in time, shall we? So this is the start of the dyeing process that took me 4 different iterations to do. I started out with regular RIT dye, and this is the original state of the fabric, which I got from Joann. It's pretty see-through, it's white, so it needs a lot of work. The first dye bath didn't seem to take. It sort of just turned everything like a grayish light purple, and that was not what we were going for, so I found some random graphite polyester dye that I had left over and did a second round of dye. Unfortunately for me, I did realize too late that the fabric was half polyester, half cotton. So all the details and embroidery have taken the dye just excellently, while the polyester has only taken the graphite dye because for some reason RIT doesn't make a fully black synthetic dye, which is crazy to me. I think all the dye fumes were getting to me because I for some reason thought that the jet black RIT dye would work even though it's not meant for polyester dye, so I just sort of did this again. If I have to dye this thing one more time, I swear I'm gonna lose my mind. But it's still gray, so I'm gonna, this is my Hail Mary. I'm doing one more try, and if these dye polys do not work, then I'm giving up and it's gonna just be gray. So here we go. 2 more hours of this. 2 more hours of my life, and I have to scrub out the sink with steel wool, put these in the washer, and then run the 24-hour self-clean washing cycle so my clothes don't become black. It's all just like so much more than it needs to be. Please, please. If you think RIT dye smells bad, just wait till you've had the pleasure of this medieval filth cauldron stench. Oh. Right, so I'm complaining about the smell a lot, and it smells so strongly that I don't notice that the flame underneath that pot has gone out and gas is leaking into the room. I promptly evacuated, opened all the windows and doors, and called my gas company to make sure I wasn't gonna die, and we're fine. Everyone's fine. For the dress that goes under it, I have 2 fabrics. It's giving more like royalty than hers. Hers has the pattern woven into it more. So after I decided that wasn't gonna fly, I found this on Etsy. It has more of a cotton linen look, and this is the pattern. And this fabric is left over from my Elwood's bunny costume. I'm using it because it has this fringe on the end, and she has that around this portion of the dress. She has a little linen looking piece that comes out of this portion of her sleeve. And then here's our trim for the sleeve edges. Various other trims. So that is the haul. Let's get into actually cutting some of this fabric. I have concerns because the pattern that I'm going to be using for the dress says it needs 14.5 yards, and I bought 10 yards. So I'm hoping that that's not a problem. Wish me luck.
With all that extreme planning set out for us, let's get into actually making the chemise to start off the project. And I am just using this pattern that I found on Etsy. I will link it below for a basic chemise pattern that I'm going to be slightly altering to try to match the seams that Elizabeth has on hers.
The sleeve is actually 3 pieces. So I've cut out the 3 sleeve pieces and sewn them together because hers has the opening on the arm that is sewn down. So this is basically just like the reverse of a regular sleeve pattern, which would sew up this side. What do her shoulders look like? I need to watch the movie and see. I can't find any reference pictures of the back of the dress, so I just have to watch this one scene really close again and again. I think there's a seam right here. Yes. So I got that back dart in. Perfect. And now for the front. This is how I want the neckline to be, and hers actually only goes down till about here. Perfect.
Once I had my center point figured out, I went ahead and cut down to that line, and I'm going to be making a facing by laying over muslin and just loosely drawing about, I would say 2 inches or 1.5 inches away from the edge of the fabric, just to give it a little bit of a space to fold over. And I'm going to be adding those buttonholes along this for the front side as well, so I need to make sure I have room for those. And then I go ahead and just do the same thing for my funky shaped sleeve pattern. The bottom edge of the sleeves and the neckline have this very tiny fringe trim, which I wasn't able to find online, so I got this scallop trim, and I'm just going to be cutting it off before the scallops, so I just sandwich it between the facing and the actual exterior dress fabric, and that's what I came out with. And with my edges finished, let's figure out these holes.
I want to practice on some scrap fabric to figure out how to do the buttonholes that are going to go along all of the front opening and the sleeves. So I am suspicious that my sewing machine knows how to do that, and I won't have to do it by hand. So that's what we're going to try and figure out right now. All right, so if we go into this stitch section, this is where I typically find my buttonholes. These are all rectangles. There it is! It's going.
I had really high hopes for this, but things are looking very wonky.
They're not very impressive. I really didn't want to do this, but I think I'm gonna have to hand sew all of the holes onto here, which is gonna be about 18. This embroidery came out nicely in a circle, but these next 2 came out as ovals, and I didn't do anything different. There is stabilizing fabric under here. I did the same thing. I pushed the same button, and they came out ovals. I think what I'm gonna have to do is use a fabric hole punch and hand do all of these, and I'm gonna probably do them a little bit further out than this because I think those are too close together. I have to hand embroider 90 little circles. I'll check back in when I'm done.
Here we go. We're hole punching with the fabric hole punch, and then I'm going around the edge of each circle just so many times, and it's taking me so long.
Do you ever have a really complex task ahead of you and you're like, oh no, I got stuck doing something that's gonna take a long time and it's really monotonous and detailed. Oh no, I can't move forward with starting the complex thing that's freaking me out. Because that's how I feel right now. So like, it's fine.
Now please enjoy 30 seconds of my stream of consciousness during this process.
This looks terrible. Winston! And I would embroider 500 holes just to make sure that I don't have to cut into my expensive fabric that I bought. The thing about me in these costumes is if I don't make it, it's not gonna happen. I'm the one who has to do it. If I wanna be a pirate, I have to do this. Quick check-in, I've started attaching the sleeves, but I haven't laced up the sides yet. I'm liking the fit of this part and the neckline, but the neckline is curling a little bit. It's all just fit. When it comes to sleeves, the sleeves ruin everything. This was looking so good when it was sleeveless, and now the sleeves are on and we've got this situation. So I'm gonna try to fix that.
I don't know why, but I'm refusing to put a zipper in this for some reason, so this is how I have to get it on and off. I did dislocate my shoulder doing this once.
Just get on. The sleeves are not. Okay, that's not that bad. Why is it kind of lumpy? These are too long. These, yep, they're too long by like a lot. Ugh, why is this hard? 3 hours later, the sleeves are looking better. I fixed the armpit situation kind of, but this situation needs some work.
Okay, here we go. Let's make the actual dress. We're starting with the pattern I found on Etsy, and we are going to be modifying it to get the seams in the right places.
If you've watched one of my videos before, you know that I will do everything in my power to not make a mock-up, but I talked to my friend Vince at BMC Designs, and his work is absolutely impeccable. He said he made 3 mock-ups before he got it right, so I'm gonna try to do at least one. Here's where we're at. It's like pinned to my outfit, but I think this is good. It'll fold over from here. We're gonna call this good and deconstruct it and start cutting it out of the black duck fabric and just see how that works.
After deconstructing my pattern, I'm just cutting each piece out of black duck fabric, and I'm just doing 2 of each and then start assembling them together. And of course the fit is not perfect at the beginning, so I messed around with it a little bit. I took it in about 1/2 inch pretty much everywhere on there, and then just sewed my bottom edges together and flipped it inside out and revealed a problem.
I always do this. Whenever I'm putting a corset together, like, logic just goes out of my brain, and I just don't understand how to get all of the seams to be done correctly. So I finished the bottom, but then I thought, let me just sew the armholes while I'm here. And now we have this, which sort of is shaped like a bat, and that's not gonna work.
So I went ahead and fixed my problem and undid that seam and only left the bottom sewn closed, ironed it, and then did a top stitch on top of that to keep everything in place. And instead of individually sewing on the hook and eyes, I'm using this hook and eye trim, which I saw Lauren Does Cosplay use. She just made this Elizabeth dress and hers came out beautifully, and I didn't even know that this existed until she posted, so major shout out to her because this saved me a ton of time. Alright, moving right along, we're going to be putting the boning into this corset to give it all of that stay structure that they had in the pirate times. So I'm basically just going in with chalk and tracing out my little channels that I'm putting in for boning, going over that with my sewing machine, and then inserting the boning into those channels so that we have a very crispy and stiff corset. Finally, I have everything fitting correctly, and I'm making sure to do this corset as a separate piece from the actual dress that's going to go over top because I don't want any of the boning channels to show on the exterior of the dress. And then I'm putting the same fabric that I'm going to be using for the underskirt onto the front of the corset so that I can have that continuous look and look like it's a dress underneath. And I've decided that I pretty much want to keep this as a separate piece because it's coming out so cute and I want to wear it in like my normal life. So that's going to make things slightly more difficult for the top portion. I would normally want to adhere the exterior of the dress in the like plum burgundy fabric right to this corset so it's very stiff and stays in place, but I think I'm going to make things harder for myself and make that standalone. Once the top fabric is sewn down, I'm going to be adding my lace fabric to the inside to give that little like flourish that hers has, and I'm adding a lace trim to the outside to kind of give it a more feminine, like less rigid look.
Okay, here is where we are at so far. Speaking of the skirt, I did make that off camera because I was feeling a little bit stressed one night and just wanted to bang it out. So I do apologize, but all it is a 1-inch elastic waistband, but I just finished the raw edge like this once, and then another time like this, so I'd have a nice, clean, crisp edge. And then once I had that done, put the elastic through the whole thing, bunched it up, and now we have this skirt. This is a really big moment of truth. So here's the status of this chemise thing. I don't even know if that's what it's called, but that's what I'm calling it. We're gonna try it on. This is extremely difficult to put on because this thing has no stretch, but here we go. Okay. It's going well. Gonna do a little shimmy. Get the sleeves right. I love it, honestly. Build up the confidence to cut into the fabric. I've procrastinated you enough, good sir. It's time to cut.
Now that I've worked out all the kinks in the pattern for the underbodice, I'm going to be taking those final pattern pieces and cutting it out of my top fabrics. So I can't tell you how nervous I was to be cutting into this fancy fabric, so I had to do a little bit of hyping myself up after I cut out all of the lining pieces. So here we go.
I just stepped full force, Hulk stomped onto this needle. I'm trying to stay in this one quadrant right here. I don't think I'm gonna be able to get everything, so I may have to expand down, but I think it's gonna be okay. Just want you guys to know how extremely brave I am that I have started making the bodice. Okay, this was really hard, but I think this was the hardest part of the whole dress. I have purchased this extremely gargantuan sleeve pattern on Etsy, printed it and cut it out and did a little Frankensteining so it's all one piece. But I will link the pattern that has the sleeve below because it's kind of hard to find like a really big balloon sleeve. And if there's one thing about me, I love a little puff sleeve moment. If there's a shirt, if there's a dress with a puff sleeve, I'm having it. But I think she's coming out so cute. I am very excited. Okay, let's cut.
After just going on about how big this sleeve pattern was, I decided that I'm actually just going to make it a little bit bigger and sort of just went fast and loose with this. Did one out of the lining fabric and then cut that same out of my top fabric, and I think that's going to be big enough for what I'm looking for.
Okay, it's time to start assembling the sleeves, and I've cut them out. Here's where we're at. I have the lining fabric pinned onto my exterior fabric, and I'm going to be sewing along this top edge. So I have made the sleeve ginormously big so that I can do pleats all in this center area, because she only has the pleats at the top, like at the top of the shoulder here. So the pleats are really going to be going until the curve starts, so all this area. Then I'm going to mark off all of the areas that I want to pleat and use embroidery floss to go through each of those little areas. So we'll tackle that once we get there, but let's sew this down.
With my sleeve pieces sewn down at the top and bottom but not the sides, I turn it inside out and do a crispy iron edge, and then I'm going to top stitch across this just to make sure that everything stays in place for my pleats. And so I watched one singular YouTube video on how to do these pleats. They're called cartridge pleats, and I'm going to be doing them all along the top of this sleeve but not the bottom. That's going to have a regular gather, and I'm using embroidery floss, which is the exact almost same color as the exterior. I made sure to be very careful because you do see this a little bit when I put the final sleeve on, but it's a very long process, and I just follow the top with the bottom and then scrunch together, and you get these really uniform looking pleats. For the bottom of the sleeve, I just did a regular gather, like very loose and fast and loose with the embroidery floss, and only did it on the interior so that it wouldn't show on the exterior.
Okay, I'm prepping everything for pleating right now, so I have to figure out how much of this fabric is left after cutting out the sleeves. And I tried to be as careful to conserve as much fabric as possible when cutting those things out. So, okay, this seems like it's gonna be enough. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, and it's doubled. I guess let's get measuring. And then I'll use the same amount of the lining fabric. So let's go to the floor. 36. Counted them myself. 36, but last year that was 37. Okay, problem. I have 9 yards of this fabric, and I have 6 and 28 inches yards of this fabric. So I am either going to have to purchase more of this fabric, use less of this fabric, or secret third option, which I think I'm leaning towards, is line the front part of the skirt, like this part, with the same fabric that's on the flap out part from the top, which I got from Mood. So I'm going to see if they have it online and they can ship it to me, and I can do that instead. Fingers crossed.
So fast forward a week, I was traveling and I got to go to Disney World for a little bit and ride the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, which just made me so much more excited to continue this project. But since I was traveling, I couldn't go to New York and get more of the fabric that I needed for the underskirt, and that was really what I was set on doing. So I had to call Mood from the airport and have them ship it to me, and it actually worked.
I called them from the airport on Monday and was like, look, I don't have time to come in. Do you have this fabric? I know it's dead stock. Is it still there? And I need 3 yards. And what do you know? She was still there.
I did a little test on the extra lining fabric that I had. So this is about 6 yards and it's just too loose. So I decided that I needed to take it in, and I did so many different trial and errors with different maths, and I'll explain it now.
I prepped the skirt and here's where we're at. Here is my lining piece. I sewed that down and I've done a top stitch all along the top and trimmed the bottom so that I have a really strong edge here to make all of my pleats on. And then since it would be easier to do this now, I went ahead and finished the bottom. So once it's folded, this fabric's a little bit longer than this fabric is. So we'll have about this much of a fold over for the end. So I think that's gonna look really good. The skirt is probably gonna be much longer than hers actually is, but we're here for the drama. And now I just have to go ahead and pleat. And so my plan is I need 32 inches of fabric around the waist. And so 26 of that is going to be my pleating. And that 26 inches of pleats, I figured out that 1 inch, since I'm doing 1/2 inch space between each of my little running stitches, once I pull all that together, it comes to 7 pleats equal 1 inch. So with that information, I'm going to take 7 pleats times 26 inches and get 182 inches / pleats that I need to do, because to figure out how much fabric you need per pleat, you take the pleat size. So this one, so in this case, it's 0.5 inches, multiply that by 2 equals 1 inch. So for every pleat equals 1 inch of fabric. So I'm going to need 182 inches of fabric to make that 26 inches of condensed waist once I have all the pleats in place. So I feel like that Charlie Day whiteboard scene where I'm just going insane, but I've finally seen the light and figured out what I need to do to make this work. So let's get into the pleating. And I'll be using this quilting ruler to measure out all of my pleats and just a little chalk pen. Let's get into it.
Finally, after all of that math and stress, we can start making the skirt. So I am doing 2 stitches simultaneously because I don't want to be working with like 7 yards of embroidery floss, because that's just cause for it being really tangled. So it's really slow of a process. It took me several hours. Like I basically spent an entire day doing this, but it was worth it because it comes out so crispy. And once my 26-inch section was pleated, I went ahead and started attaching it to the bodice, and I'm using that same thick embroidery floss to put it on because I just want to make sure that it's really on there, because this thing is so heavy. And I guess we're speed running the end of putting all of the trims on because I didn't really film anything. So here's what all of my trims looked like. Some of these are from Etsy. One of them's from Amazon. I'll link them below. But I just sewed those on to the front edges of the skirt with the black scallop trim and then the thick gold trim down the middle. And then I hand sewed everything else on for the top and the bodice and stuff because it was just so delicate.
I did the little trim on the front. It is a crisp edge on the inside. I'm just like really pulling out the stops on making this look goodish. I mean, look at this. And I did the collar. So I just did all of this stuff because I thought it'd be easier to do before I had the sleeves on. And also because in true me fashion, I leave the sleeves for last because sleeves are the bane of my existence. They're my #1 final boss on every single costume that I make. So go ahead and put those on now. I'm gonna put them about 1 inch away from the edge of the top. I'm gonna take this edge and just stitch that right down to the top. The difference between how I'm sewing the sleeve on and how I sewed the skirt on is I sewed right sides together, and then it has a little like jut out to give it more of like a snatched waist, puffy skirt look. But with these sleeves, they actually just sit right on top. So I'm doing wrong side to right side, and there will be no turning inside out. It's just gonna sit right there. So it's gonna look a little bit weird, but it's going to have trim over it anyways, so it's like not a problem.
And of course, as anticipated, putting the sleeves on was the most difficult part of this whole process. I'm using the embroidery floss again, but because it's not right sides together, I have to do this really weird method to just get the sleeve to even stay on while I'm sewing it. But we made it through, and I'm just hand sewing the rest of the trim, and then I made these little like twisty things for the closures on the sleeves, the shoulders, and the front of her dress, just out of some nylon paracord, and then I'm sewing on these little like stretchy elastic things that I made, plus some buttons, and then that's it. I will show you the reveal.
because this is so heavy. So basically I'm obsessed. She's just the most gigantic, difficult, grandiose cosplay I've ever made, and I love her so much. This is probably my favorite thing that I've ever made, truly, and it's just like a piece of art to me because it took so much brain power and just so many new techniques that I didn't know, and I just love how it came out. For the most part, I think she came out gorgeous, and I love that it's 3 costumes in, it's like 3 outfits in one, 2 costumes in one, because we've got the whole look and then just the chemise, which actually held up so well for being pummeled around in the ocean. I don't know what to do now because I've completed yet another of my childhood dreams. So I guess I'm just gonna keep making my favorite outfits from my favorite movies because that's just like what I do on this channel. One of the reasons that I decided to actually tackle making this was because I've never made a gown before. I've never made something that's this big. And I'm planning on making Ariana Grande's Glinda Bubble Dress from the new movie that's coming out this year. And I'm hoping that this was like practice, even though it's not the same techniques at all, but I just wanted to do something that seemed really intimidating, and it was a success. So I feel like maybe I'm brave enough to try that next gown. So that wraps up this costume. I did a whole makeup transformation for Elizabeth, which I didn't film. If anyone's interested in that, I can definitely make a video on showing the process of how I make my face look a little bit more like Keira Knightley's. And just stay tuned for more cosplay content because that's what I do here on this channel. And don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and come back for more cosplay content in the future. Sometimes I don't know what to do because I just like have this in my house now. So I'll just look at it for a little while before it goes back in the closet. Okay. Thanks for watching. Bye.